Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics are an American professional basketball team based in Boston. The Celtics compete in the National Basketball Association, NBA, as a member of the league's Eastern Conference Atlantic Division. Founded in 1946 as one of the league's original 8 teams, the Celtics play their home games at TD Garden, which they share with the National Hockey League's Boston Bruins. The Celtics are regarded as one of the most successful basketball teams in NBA history. The franchise is tied with the Los Angeles Lakers for most NBA championships won with 17, accounting for 23.6% of all NBA championships since the league's founding, and currently holds the record for the most recorded wins of any NBA team. The Celtics have a notable rivalry with the Los Angeles Lakers, which was heavily highlighted throughout the 1960s and 1980s. During the two teams' many matchups in the 1980s, the Celtics star, Larry Bird, and the Lakers star, Magic Johnson, had an ongoing feud. The franchise has played the Lakers a record 12 times in the NBA Finals, including their most recent appearances in 2008 and 2010, of which the Celtics have won 9. 4 Celtics players, Bob Cousy, Bill Russell, Dave Cowens and Larry Bird, have won the NBA Most Valuable Player award for an NBA record total of 10 MVP awards. Both the nickname Celtics and their mascot Lucky the Leprechaun are a nod to Boston's historically large Irish population, and also to the original Celtics, a marquee team prior to the NBA. The Celtics' rise to dominance began in the late 1950s, after coach Red Auerbach acquired center Bill Russell, who would become the cornerstone of the Celtics dynasty, in a draft day trade in 1956. Led by Russell and point guard Bob Calzy, the Celtics won their first NBA championship in 1957. Russell, along with a talented supporting cast of future Hall of Famers including John Havlicek, Tom Heinsohn, K.C. Jones, Sam Jones, Satch Sanders, and Bill Sharman, would usher the Celtics into the greatest period in franchise history, winning 8 consecutive NBA championships from 1959 to 1966. After Russell retired in 1969, the team entered a period of rebuilding. In the mid-1970s, the Celtics became contenders once again, winning 2 championships in 1974 and 1976 under the leadership of center Dave Cowens and point guard JoJo White. In the 1980s, the Celtics returned to dominance, as well as renewed competition with the Showtime Lakers, who were led by Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Anchored by the Big Three of Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish, the Celtics won championships in 1981, 1984, and 1986. The team defeated the Lakers in the 1984 finals, but lost to Los Angeles in 1985 and 1987. After the departure of Parrish as a free agent and the retirement of both Bird and McHale, the team struggled through the 1990s and much of the early 2000s. It was not until the Celtics assembled a new Big Three of Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen that they found success once again. Under the leadership of head coach Doc Rivers, the team beat the Lakers to win a championship in 2008, but lost to Los Angeles in a 7-game series in 2010, the latest finals matchup between the two ancient rivals. By the start of the 2013-14 season, none of the new Big Three were still with the team. Garnett and Pierce were traded away to the Brooklyn Nets, while Allen left as a free agent. After a period of rebuilding, the Celtics became a force again under head coach Brad Stevens. During the 2016-17 season, the Celtics clinched the top seed in the Eastern Conference, but were eliminated in the conference finals. Led by Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, the team returned to the conference finals in 2018 and 2020, but were eliminated both times. Franchise history: 1946 to 1950, early years. The Boston Celtics were formed on June 6, 1946, by Boston Garden Arena Corporation President Walter A. Brown as a team in the Basketball Association of America, and became part of the National Basketball Association after the absorption of the National Basketball League by the BA in the fall of 1949. In 1950, the Celtics signed Chuck Cooper, becoming the first NBA franchise to draft a black player. Chuck Connors of the Rifleman fame was an original member of the Celtics in 1946. 1950 to 1957, a rival of Bob Cousy and Red Auerbach. Bob Cousy played 13 years for the team, 6 of them ending in NBA titles. The Celtics struggled during their early years, until the hiring of coach Red Auerbach. In the franchise's early days, Auerbach had no assistants, ran all the practices, did all the scouting, both of opposing teams and college draft prospects, and scheduled all road trips. One of the first great players to join the Celtics was Bob Calzy, whom Auerbach initially refused to draft out of nearby Holy Cross because he was too flashy. Cousy's contract eventually became the property of the Chicago Stags, but when that franchise went bankrupt, Cousy went to the Celtics in a dispersal draft. After the 1955-56 season, Auerbach made a stunning trade, sending perennial All-Star Ed Macauley to the St. Louis Hawks along with the draft rights to Cliff Hagan for the second overall pick in the draft. After negotiating with the Rochester Royals, a negotiation that included a promise that the Celtics owner would send a highly sought-after ice capades to Rochester if the Royals would let Russell slide to number 2, Auerbach used the pick to select University of San Francisco center Bill Russell. Auerbach also acquired Holy Cross standout, and 1957 NBA Rookie of the Year, Tom Heinsohn. Russell and Heinsohn worked extraordinarily well with Cousy, and they were the players around whom Auerbach would build the champion Celtics for more than a decade. 1956 to 1969, Bill Russell era. Bill Russell starred on 11 NBA title teams in 13 years as a Celtic. Sam Jones played with the Celtics, 1957 to 1969, winning 10 titles. With Bill Russell, the Celtics advanced to the 1957 NBA Finals and defeated the St. Louis Hawks in 7 games, the first of a record 17 championships. Russell went on to win 11 championships, making him the most decorated player in NBA history. In 1958, the Celtics again advanced to the NBA Finals, this time losing to the Hawks in 6 games. However, with the acquisition of K.C. Jones that year, the Celtics began a dynasty that would last for more than a decade. In 1959, the Celtics won the NBA championship after sweeping the Minneapolis Lakers, the first of their record 8 consecutive championships. During that time, the Celtics met the Lakers in the finals 5 times, starting an intense and often bitter rivalry that has spanned generations. In 1964, the Celtics became the first NBA team to have an all-African American starting lineup. On December 26, 1964, Willie Naulls replaced an injured Tom Heinsohn, joining Tom Satch Sanders, K.C. Jones, Sam Jones, and Bill Russell in the starting lineup. The Celtics defeated St. Louis 97-84. Boston won its next 11 games with Naulls starting in place of Heinsohn. The Celtics of the late 1950s-1960s are widely considered one of the most dominant teams of all time. Auerbach retired as coach after the 1965-66 season and Russell took over as player coach, which was Auerbach's ploy to keep Russell interested. With his appointment, Russell became the first African American coach in any U.S. pro sport. Auerbach would remain the general manager, a position he would hold well into the 1980s. However, the Celtics' string of NBA titles ended when they lost to the Philadelphia 76ers in the 1967 Eastern Conference Finals. The aging team managed 2 more championships in 1968 and 1969, defeating the Los Angeles Lakers each time. Russell retired after the 1969 season, effectively ending a Celtics dynasty that had garnered an unrivaled 11 NBA titles in 13 seasons. The team's run of 8 consecutive is the longest championship streak in U.S. professional sports history. 1970 to 1978, Cowens Havlicek White era. John Havlicek, 17 years with the Celtics. Dave Cowens, 2 titles and MVP in 1973. The 1970 season was a rebuilding year, as the Celtics had their first losing record since the 1949-50 season. However, with the acquisition of Paul Silas and future Hall of Famers Dave Cowens and JoJo White, the Celtics soon became dominant again. After losing in the Eastern Conference Finals in 1972, the Celtics regrouped and came out determined in 1973 and posted an excellent 68-14 regular season record. But the season ended in disappointment, as they were upset in 7 games by the New York Knicks in the conference finals. John Havlicek injured his right shoulder in Game 6 and was forced to play Game 7 shooting left-handed. The Celtics returned to the playoffs the next year, defeating the Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA Finals in 1974 for their 12th NBA championship. Boston took a 3-2 series lead and had a chance to claim the title on their home court. The Bucks won Game 6 in Boston when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar nestled in a hook shot with 3 seconds left in the game's second overtime, and the series returned to Milwaukee. Cowens was the hero in Game 7, scoring 28 points, as the Celtics brought the title back to Boston for the first time in 5 years. In 1976, the team won yet another championship, defeating the Phoenix Suns in 6 games. The finals featured one of the greatest games in NBA history. With the series tied at 2 games apiece, the Suns trailed early in the Boston Garden, but came back to force overtime. In double overtime, a Gar-Hurt turnaround jumper at the top of the key sent the game to a third overtime, at which point the Celtics prevailed. After the 1976 championship and a playoff appearance in 1977, Boston went into another rebuilding phase. In the 1977 NBA draft, the Celtics drafted a young forward from UNC Charlotte named Cedric Maxwell. Cornbread Maxwell did not contribute much in his rookie season, but he showed promise. Auerbach's job became even tougher following the 1977-78 season in which they went 32-50 as Havlicek, the Celtics' all-time leading scorer, retired after 16 seasons. The Celtics owned 2 of the top 8 picks in the 1978 NBA draft. Auerbach took a risk by selecting junior Larry Bird of Indiana State with the 6th overall pick, knowing that Bird would stay in college for his senior year but believing that his potential would make him worth the wait. The team retained Bird's rights for 1 year and signed him soon after he led Indiana State to the NCAA championship game. In 1978, Celtics owner Irv Levin traded franchises with Buffalo Braves owner John E. Brown Jr. 2 weeks before the swap of franchises was made official, details of a 6-player trade between the two teams were reported. Boston sent Freeman Williams, Kevin Cunnert, and Kermit Washington to the Braves for Tiny Archibald, Billy Knight, and Marvin Barnes. The move turned Boston fans against Brown, both because Cunnert and Washington were seen as key pieces of the team's future and because Auerbach publicly stated that he was not consulted about the trade. 1979 to 1992, Larry Bird era. The relationship between Brown and Auerbach worsened with Brown's decision to acquire Bob McAdoo in February 1979, in exchange for 3 first-round draft picks that Auerbach had planned to use to rebuild the franchise. Again, Brown made the trade without consulting Auerbach. Auerbach almost left Boston to take a job with the New York Knicks as a result. With public support strongly behind Auerbach, Brown sold the team to Harry Mangurian in 1979 rather than run the risk of losing his famed general manager. The Celtics would struggle through the season, going 29-53. Newcomers Chris Ford, Rick Roby, Cedric Maxwell and Nate Archibald failed to reverse the team's momentum. 12-time All-Star Larry Bird played in the Celtics from 1979 to 1992. He is widely regarded as one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Larry Bird debuted for the Celtics during the 1979-80 season. With a new owner in place, Auerbach made a number of moves that would bring the team back to prominence. He almost immediately traded McAdoo, a former NBA scoring champion, to the Detroit Pistons for guard Emil Carr, a defensive specialist, and 2 first-round picks in the 1980 NBA draft. He also picked up point guard Gerald Henderson from the CBA. Carr, Archibald, Henderson and Ford formed a highly competent backcourt, blending in well with the talented frontcourt of Cowens, Maxwell, and Bird. With Bird winning NBA Rookie of the Year honors, the team went 61-21, a 32-game improvement from the previous season. Playing strong in the playoffs, the Celtics fell to the Philadelphia 76ers in the Eastern Conference Finals. After the season, Auerbach completed one of the most lopsided trades in NBA history, garnering a pair of future Hall of Famers for a pair of first-round draft picks. Seeking to improve the team immediately, Auerbach sent the team's 2 first-round draft picks to the Golden State Warriors for both center Robert Parrish and the Warriors' first-round pick. He then used the pick the Celtics obtained from Golden State to select University of Minnesota power forward Kevin McHale. The Big Three of Bird, McHale and Parrish played together for the Celtics until 1992, won 3 NBA championships together, and were later described as the best NBA frontcourt of all time. Despite losing center Dave Cowens to retirement late in training camp, the Celtics went 62-20 under coach Bill Fitch in 1980-81. Once again, the Celtics faced the 76ers in the Eastern Conference Finals, falling behind 3-1 before coming back to win Game 7, 91-90. The Celtics went on to win the 1981 NBA championship over the Houston Rockets, with Maxwell being named NBA Finals MVP. Following the 1981-82 season, the Celtics once again met the 76ers in the playoffs. This time, they lost in 7 games. In 1983 the Celtics were swept in the playoffs, a first for the franchise, by the Milwaukee Bucks. Afterwards, Fitch resigned and the team was sold to new owners led by Don Gaston. In 1983-84, the Celtics under new coach K.C. Jones would go 62-20 and return to the NBA Finals after a 3-year hiatus. Boston came back from a 2-1 deficit to defeat the Lakers for their 15th championship. Bird renewed his college rivalry with Lakers star Magic Johnson during this series. After the season, Auerbach officially retired as general manager, but maintained the position of team president. He was succeeded by Jan Folk. In 1985, the Lakers and Celtics met again in the finals, with the Lakers winning. This was the first time the Lakers had defeated the Celtics in the finals and the only time the team had won a championship at Boston Garden. During the following offseason, the Celtics acquired Bill Walton from the Los Angeles Clippers in exchange for Cedric Maxwell. Walton had been an All-Star and League MVP while leading the Portland Trail Blazers to the 1977 NBA championship, but injuries had hobbled him since. Considered the best passing center in NBA history, he stayed healthy and was a big part of the Celtics' success in 1986. The Celtics won the second pick in the 1986 NBA draft and drafted University of Maryland star Len Bias, one of the most heralded prospects of his era. Bias died 36 hours later of an accidental cocaine overdose. Despite the tragedy, the Celtics remained competitive in 1986-87, going 59-23 and again winning the Eastern Conference Championship. They were defeated in the finals by the Lakers in 6 games. In 1988, the Celtics lost in 6 games to the Detroit Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. Following the season, head coach K.C. Jones retired and was replaced by assistant Jimmy Rogers. Boston's hopes for 1988-89 faded when Bird underwent a procedure to remove bone spurs in his feet early in the season, and the Celtics won just 42 games before a first-round playoff defeat to the Pistons. Bird returned in 1989-90 and led the Celtics to a 52-30 record. In the playoffs, the Celtics collapsed after winning the first 2 games in a best-of-5 series against the New York Knicks, losing 3 straight games in the series. After the playoffs, Rogers was fired and replaced by assistant coach and former Celtics player Chris Ford. Under Ford's leadership, the Celtics improved to 56-26 in 1990-91, recapturing the Atlantic Division title even though Bird missed 22 games with several injuries. The Celtics again lost to the Pistons in the playoffs. In 1992, a late-season rally allowed a 51-31 Celtics team to catch the New York Knicks and repeat as Atlantic Division champions. After sweeping the Indiana Pacers in the first round, the Celtics lost a 7-game Eastern Conference semifinals series to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Back injuries limited Bird to only 45 regular season games, and just 4 of 10 in the playoffs. After 13 NBA seasons and a gold medal at the Barcelona Olympics with the Dream Team, continued back trouble led Bird to retire in 1992. 1993-1998, rebuilding years. The loss of Bird and the aging of the team's other veteran stars forced coach Chris Ford into rebuilding mode. Hopes centered on 26-year-old Reggie Lewis, a small forward out of Boston's Northeastern University. In the first round of the 1993 playoffs, Lewis fainted during Boston's 4-game series loss by the Charlotte Hornets. An examination revealed heart problems, but Lewis was able to get doctors to clear him for a comeback. Before he could make it, he died of a heart attack while shooting baskets at Brandeis University during the off-season. The Celtics honored his memory by retiring his number 35. With McHale having retired after the Celtics' playoff loss to the Hornets, Boston's original Big Three era came to an end in 1994 upon Robert Parrish's signing with Charlotte. The team collapsed, finishing out of the playoffs with a 32-50 mark. In 1994, the Celtics hired former player and legendary towel-waving cheerleader Emil Carr as the team's new vice president of basketball operations. Working alongside general manager Jan Folk, Carr selected University of North Carolina star Eric Montrose with Boston's first-round pick in the 1994 NBA draft. Montrose became the new heir apparent in the paint, but failed to develop and was eventually traded. 1994-95 was the Celtics' final season in the Boston Garden. The Celtics signed aging Dominique Wilkins as a free agent, who led the team in scoring with 17.8 ppg. Second-year player Dino Rada, a power forward from Croatia, added an interior presence the team had been lacking in 1993-94. The Celtics made the playoffs, losing to the heavily favored Orlando Magic in 4 games. In 1995, the Celtics moved from the Boston Garden to the Fleet Center, later TD Bank North, then TD Garden. Carr fired Chris Ford and took the coaching reins himself. After drafting Providence College star Eric Williams, the Celtics struggled to a 33-49 record. Things got worse in 1996-97 as the Celtics lost a franchise record 67 games, setting an unwanted NBA record, winning only once against other Atlantic Division teams and just 15 victories overall. In spite of the emergence of first-round draft pick Antoine Walker, Carrs resigned after the season ended, while Rick Pitino was hired to join the franchise as the team's president, director of basketball operations, and head coach, reportedly on a $70 million 10-year contract. Folk resigned on May 7, 1997. Pitino's appointment as team president was controversial as Auerbach, the incumbent who had filled that role for more than 25 years, first heard about the change from local media. Unfortunately for the franchise, Pitino was not the savior everyone hoped he'd be. Auerbach bore the insult of being elbowed out with dignity, even as the team failed to improve. The Celtics received the 3rd and 6th draft picks in the 1997 NBA draft, and used the picks to select a brand new backcourt through Chauncey Billups and Ron Mercer. The young team that lost 67 games the year before was dismantled, with David Wesley, Dino Rada and Rick Fox being let go, and Williams traded to the Denver Nuggets for a pair of second-round draft picks. Williams would return to the Celtics in 1999 and played for 4 years. Walter McCarty was also acquired in a trade with the Knicks. With a promising start, upsetting the defending champions Chicago Bulls at home on opening night, and hard play from the youngsters that led to leaderships in turnovers and steals, the team improved its victories from 15 to 36 despite many losing streaks. Billups was subsequently traded to the Raptors during his rookie year, and Mercer was traded to the Nuggets during his 3rd season. 1998 to 2013, Paul Pierce era. Drafted by the Celtics in 1998, Paul Pierce went on to star for the Celtics and later won the NBA Finals MVP award when the team won the NBA championship in 2008. The following year in the 1998 NBA draft, the Celtics drafted Paul Pierce, a college star who had been expected to be drafted much earlier than the Celtics' 10th overall pick. Pierce had an immediate impact during the lockout-shortened 1998-99 season, averaging 19.5 points and being named Rookie of the Month in February as he led the league in steals. However, the Celtics continued to struggle as Pitino failed to achieve meaningful success. After Boston lost to the Toronto Raptors on March 1, 2000, on a buzzer beater by Vince Carter, Pitino delivered the memorable walking through that door speech, invoking Bird, McHale and Parrish, which has been frequently cited over the years as a reality check for organizations wrestling with bygone glory. He resigned in January 2001. Following the resignation of Rick Pitino, the Celtics saw modest improvement under coach Jim O'Brien. Paul Pierce matured into an NBA star and was ably complemented by